we're talking about our External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's visit to Nepal. In fact, this is the first foreign visit of our External Affairs to Nepal in 2024. This has happened where he went to the chair of the 7th meeting of the Nepal-India Joint Commission. There were two significant deals that have been signed, which include an MOU for cooperation in renewable energy and an agreement according to which there is 10,000 megawatt electricity which will be provided by India to Nepal. But when we take a look at the larger picture of this growing closeness between India and Nepal after the belligerence and the difficult ties that India and Nepal had seen in the previous years, and obviously the concern that is expected out of China, that has been trying to build association and wanting to garner political and strategic control of Nepal, which is detrimental to India's policy, India's growth and development in the subcontinent and its association with Nepal. Starting off my conversation with Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee. Now, Ambassador Mukherjee, strong strides that have been taken by India and Nepal, particularly when the next Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, Pushkar Kamal Dahal has come to fore. This was right before the time when KP Sharma Oli, who was at the helm of affairs, and he had continued to push for his association with China and even came up with strong statements which were against India, particularly with regards to these disputed territories that Nepal claimed were theirs. So, do we see this massive shift in the way Nepal is handling its association with India and vice versa?
Yes, indeed. Actually, India has always tried to be an extremely good neighbor to Nepal, regardless of which government is in power. We have right from the beginning tried to encourage Nepal's development. We give them huge amounts of development cooperation. You would be surprised, Megha, if you see every year in our budget how much money we give to Nepal for assistance, regardless of whether the government is friendly to us or not. We have consistently followed this policy. Now, with the new government in Nepal, it is indeed an extremely positive development that we have been able to sign these agreements, and that once again, Nepal has understood that situated where it is between two huge neighbors, China and India, it must maintain an equilibrium and a balance, and it must understand that while China's development cooperation comes with a huge price attached to it, India, on the other hand, provides development cooperation virtually free so that Nepal can develop. As far as the areas which earlier government had tried to raise with us, we hope that with the present government, we would be able to settle these issues normally. Some are quite deep-rooted, Megha, and will require some dialogue and discussion, because there are some who believe that those who live in the border areas close to India do not deserve to be treated as full Nepali citizens. That is something that has been festering for a long time and needs to be handled with sensitivity and with a certain amount of give and take on both sides.
Right.
With the government in Nepal, we really hope that just in the manner in which we've been able to settle our issues with Bangladesh, and that we have a friendly government in Bangladesh, that we also now have a friendly government in Nepal. This is even more important considering our present problems, Megha, that you are well aware of in Moldova.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, there was a time where there would be increased conversations, visits by the Chinese over. In fact, back in the day, there was Xi Jinping who had also visited Nepal after his very much touted Chennai visit that had taken place, the meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and his very belligerent stance that was taken, where he had made this statement that we are going to break the legs and crack the bones of those who eye the Chinese territories or who try to break the sovereignty of the country. And this was the time when KP Oli was the Prime Minister of Nepal. And since then, India and Nepal relations have come a long way.
Well, I'd like to say that the people of Nepal and the people of India are very closely tied together. And yes, there are some elites in Nepal who are very, very heavily influenced by China. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party believes that through manipulating the elites, they can control the country. It doesn't really happen and the countries like India, for example, you can't manipulate a few elites and then hope to control the country. Neither is that possible in Nepal. Practically the entire population of Nepal has had relationships with India, and you have Indians having a similar situation regarding Nepal. So the fact is that India is, in a sense, indispensable for Nepal, and the point is that we are in a very brotherly or a sisterly kind of a relationship. So that relationship is very, very strong, and even any Nepalese leadership or any Nepalese government that tries to break that relationship in favor of doing what the Pakistan military is doing the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party, well, it's going to find itself in a sticky situation because it's not going to improve conditions in Nepal. It will make it much worse. And the Nepali people, who are a very proud people, they will respond to that. So I think what is happening is we are going back to a healthy and normal path of good relations between
Okay.
India and Nepal.
Okay. Patikrit, if you could take us back to the trajectory of India-Nepal relationship, and particularly at a time when China had tried to showcase its might and transgressed into Nepalese territories, even taking control of those areas bordering India. Now, how has the situation changed? Why do you think the situation has changed?
Mega, to understand the enormity of the relation between India and Nepal, the deities which are being constructed in Ayodhya, the original stone, the Shaligram, actually came from Nepal. They were from the bank of Gandaki River in Nepal. So from there, the Shaligrams were brought in for carving out the statues of Ram Lalla. There is a cultural civilizational connect that goes back to, eternity. The issue is this, much like India, a country like Nepal, which is very small, has been going through a lot of churning, and there were elements who wanted to push Nepal into the arms of China. But there are two, three things that has happened. Because of these agreements that Nepal was compelled to sign with China, today the situation in Nepal is such that because of free trade agreements, you have an overwhelming flooding of Chinese goods into the Nepali market, where the Nepali traders and manufacturers have been pushed out. That's number one. Secondly, the salami slicing that the Chinese have done for a long time, they have been doing it, and the only government remained completely silent towards the whole issue. Third, after Nepal was converted into a democracy, there has been a lot of conversions. There has been a sustained effort being made to create an environment where Hinduism will be looked down. There has been a lot of revolt against that. We have seen what is happening recently. The issue of hydropower is very, very significant. Let me tell you the reason. Nepal's installed capacity for hydropower is around 2,800 megawatt. Its potential is around 83,000 megawatt by certain records or certain estimates. However, they cannot export this electricity anywhere else except India, even if they try to export it to China, because of the presence of the Himalayas in between. You cannot have that kind of connectivity. So the only country they can actually export it is India, and the agreement right now is of 10,000 megawatt of electricity that India would import from Nepal over the next 10 years. It does add to a lot of lot to the Nepali economy, which actually has been battered over the last 2 years, first by the COVID pandemic, then because of the earthquakes. So it is a big boost for the Nepali economy. There was one issue that India had to deal with. Let me just one last point. The Chinese were trying to push in a lot of investments, trying to squeeze the Indians out of the Nepal entire power grid sector. So India made it clear that it cannot buy electricity from Nepal if the investments are by a company from a country with which it does not have a bilateral power sector cooperation. And that's why I think, that game that the Chinese were playing were actually gradually shunted out by the Nepalis. They realized as an independent country, they can have good relations with the Nepalis or with the Chinese as well. But the way certain elements were trying to push India out, I think it has backfired both economically and otherwise also culturally. I think it's a good beginning. India is not an adversary of Nepal. Some in Nepal try to project that India is a big brother. We are not. There are cultural connect which goes back to eternity, as I mentioned.
All right.
And both together can have a better future.
Fair enough. Quickly also getting in Joyita Basu on the telecast with us. And Joyita, have the Nepalese truly gotten rid of the Chinese salami slicing? Keeping in mind the Belt and Road initiative of the Chinese traverses through Nepal. There have been hydropower projects that have been planned and are going to be executed on the land of Nepal by the Chinese. There have, like I said, growing interest points that are being explored between India and Nepal. But can there be a harmonious association between India and Nepal when we also have seen in the past few years this camaraderie, or like I said, the big brother attitude that China has been playing in the territory of Nepal for the past several years, although things have been have somewhat been quiet in the past few months or maybe even a couple of years.
Well, Megha, when you look at India-Nepal relations and China-Nepal relations, the fact of the matter is that India and Nepal are natural allies and partners, and basically it is not just because of locational reasons where Nepal is right next to India. Sorry. And as a result of which, what happens is that because it's right next to India, the closest port that it can go to is Calcutta port, and however much the Chinese may be promising the Nepalese that they will provide an alternative route to the sea, it is not possible. So when it comes to India and China, and apart from that, there is a serious civilizational connect. Okay, it's just like the way it is between certain countries. I mean, your religion is the kind of the same. There's intermarriages happen, and also as a result of which India is the natural partner. So what happens is that there has been some kind of problems in the relationship between India and Nepal in the last few years for various reasons, political reasons, much of it inspired by China and instigated by China, I would say. But I think this is happening is also showing that in spite of Nepal has been talking about maintaining equidistance between the two countries. In fact, one of their ministers had given us in Sunday Guardian the interview saying that we want to maintain equidistance between the two countries. But I mean, that is not really possible given, again I'm saying, that is Nepal's location and Nepal's serious connection with India. I mean, even now people from, priests from Nepal, young boys from Nepal, they come to Varanasi and they become priests over there. If you go to Varanasi, you see them. They're coming to India for working and all. Yeah. So in terms of connectivity, in that cultural and civilizational connect, China cannot beat that. But in spite of that, what China has done is that it has started Mandarin-speaking schools. And it is not just, when you are talking about salami slicing is not just territorial salami slicing. What it is trying to do is that it's trying to erode Nepalese political system, society from within. It is being said that every level of Nepal's society, or rather I would say the political system, the ecosystem, media, army, political parties, everywhere China has found a place. Okay. But the thing is that this very deal, that is not going to be liked by China. And of course, let's also not forget the significance of the Himalayas and the water. One of the reasons that China wants to control this area is the water there.
Okay, all right. Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, why is there no grandstanding that we at one point of time was seeing from the Nepalese side, the Nepalese Prime Minister. And also the kind of frequent visits that used to be made from the Chinese side into Nepal. There was time that the Chinese were very closely invested in the political developments, in the political scenario of the Nepalese political system. So why is it everything has gotten suddenly silent from the Chinese side into what happens in Nepal?
I don't think the Chinese are silent at all, Megha. They are probably plotting their next move. This is part of, you are absolutely right when you remind all of us and our listeners that there was a time when the Chinese ambassador in Kathmandu was actually giving instructions to the then Nepali Prime Minister what steps he should take to maintain his coalition, etc. Things have changed, things have moved, and definitely the Chinese must have understood that the present atmosphere in Kathmandu is not conducive to the kind of aggressive diplomacy that they had been conducting earlier. And that being said, there is also perhaps a realization on the Nepalese side, as Joyita just explained, apart from the cultural and civilizational and religious connect, there is also simple economics, that it's a landlocked country and its access to the sea can only be through India because of geographical reasons. And moreover, we have an open visa-free border. And for instance, in Delhi, every third person you meet who is here doing casual work or regular work happens to be a Nepali. So, and they send huge remittances home. So a large part of the Nepali economy is funded by remittances sent by Nepalis who are working here in India because of the open border policy of the government of India. That is not the case with China, and they cannot cross the border with China so easily, and nor would China be so generous as we have been with Nepali citizens working here. So in fact, I hope that these developments yesterday and today portend a new future for Indo-Nepalese relations, because when you are a large country with small neighbors, even when you want to do something good, it can be misunderstood. The United States has the same problem. So we have tried our level best, and sometimes we've been misunderstood. If the misunderstanding has given way to a new understanding, I think it is in a win-win situation for both India and Nepal. Maybe.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, can we safely say, in terms of the multipolar order that we see across the globe, that there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies? Keeping in mind also this interesting set of developments that have taken place in an opinion piece that has come out in the state-run media, where the Prime Minister of our country is being praised by the Chinese, where the strategic policies of India vis-a-vis US and China and Russia are at this point of time being highlighted in a positive light. So while there may be belligerence when it comes to the territories of Nepal or Ladakh or Arunachal Pradesh, can there also be some sort of point of cohesion that can be worked out between India and China, and also when it comes to the territory of Nepal?
Well, between India and China, I would not take that particular op-ed with the seriousness with which some people seem to take it. The fact that it was, I think, deliberately written so as to confuse public opinion in India, and also to show the international community something that is not true, which is that it is not China that is being belligerent, when the fact is throughout the Indo-China boundary, or rather the Indo-Tibet boundary, the Chinese are being extremely belligerent. So the fact is, actions speak louder than words, even the printed word. And unfortunately, actions by the Chinese are very different. The same thing goes for Nepal. As has correctly been said, the ambassadors of China have acted like viceroys in India during the British period. basically trying to control the government and telling them what to do and what not to do. And I think the Nepalis are a very proud people, and they have they seem to be reacting to this kind of thing. So much so that I'm told in Nepal, Chinese people say that no, we are Malaysians, we are Taiwanese. They don't admit to being communist Chinese because as many ordinary Nepalis, they don't like communist Chinese. So that is the fact of life with China. The Chinese, basically they enrich a few elites, whereas relationship with India, elites are not in the picture. The huge population of Nepal is much more in the picture. So the Indian connection is good for the common man and the common citizen of Nepal, whereas the Chinese relationship has been advantageous to the elite at the expense of the general population.
Okay. Okay, all right. Quickly then, Patrikrita, a quick view from you about what more can be done in building this confidence between both the countries. India has been systematic and generous when it comes to a number of projects, a number of welfare schemes, a number of financial aid that is provided to Nepal. Keeping in mind also during the times of emergency, India plays the role of a helpful neighbor, whether it is about the Ukraine crisis and lifting out the Nepalese students, or for that matter, what happened in Israel and evacuation of a number of Nepalese nationals and bringing them back into safe harbor.
Well, I will also add to the vaccines that were provided by India to Nepal during the COVID situation. Let me tell you one thing, as has been very nicely, mentioned by the other two respected panelists. I'll just add one thing. Apart from the economic and the cultural aspect, there has been a little bit of acceptance by the Nepalis of the fact that the Chinese were pushing Nepal into a debt trap. If you look at the conditions and the contract terms and conditions of the hydropower projects, it was all about China benefiting at the cost of Nepal. That is something which forced the Nepalis, at least to a certain extent, if not a pushback, then to show that, look, we are not all about getting into the Chinese lap. If you do all these things, there is an alternate, an alternate with whom we have a civilizational connect. And therefore, I think it's a balancing act being done by the Nepalis. It is true, as Ambassador Mukherjee also mentioned, that it's not that Chinese are born from that area. The Belt and Road Initiative, some other day we can discuss, the conditions and the terms of the agreements are so shocking that Nepal is almost on the brink of a debt trap being put by the Chinese. That realization, forcing them to do this balancing act. I hope better sense prevail and they continue. Two brothers can have some amount of differences. It doesn't mean that you go and join hand with an adversary which will put you in trap. So right. I think relationship should be given a little more time, and it will continue to bloom as it has for the last so many centuries.
Okay, quickly then, Joyita, before I wrap this up now, what turned the tide in India's favor? Because we saw this very strong, very visible change right after KP Oli was removed from his prime ministership. There were fresh elections and there was Pushpa Dahal that came into power. And therein we saw this shift in power in favor of India. We also saw on the ground during the election campaigning right ahead of the polls that took place in Nepal, and Dahal was voted to power, there were a large number of Nepalese population who would come out on the streets and protest against KP Oli and his association with the Chinese and how he was acting as a puppet at the hands of the Chinese.
One thing we have to remember is that Nepal, people of Nepal, like any other sovereign country, they are very proud of what they are, of their heritage, of basically it's an independent sovereign nation, and that is how they should be treated. So that is where they have a problem with, following the diktat of China. But here again, I'm going to mention one thing, and that is about, it should not come across as India's Nepal policy or our people in Nepal are trying to run Nepal from the Indian embassy there. And I think that became a problem in Nepal because they started to get the feeling, they started to feel that basically it was China trying to run Nepal from the Chinese embassy. So I think they kind of revolted against that. There is a reset in policy, but at the same time, they're very sensitive people. We also should be very careful about handling them. We should not encourage any blockade from our side, as it had happened some time back, quite a few years back. You know, fuel and all trucks were not being allowed to go to Nepal. You see, whatever leverage we have over Nepal, we should not use that.
Yep.
You know, we should not come across as the big brother, treat them as equal, and I think everything is going to fall in place.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining me on the telecast, sharing your views on the matter. The Foreign Affairs Minister continues his trip to Nepal. There have been a number of MOUs and agreements that have been signed, and that also brings both the nations closer to each other.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.